This is part 4 of the integumentary system. We're still discussing hair. The functions of hair are to protect the scalp from ultraviolet light, to provide insulation for the skull, to keep your head warm, in other words, to prevent the entry of foreign particles into your nose, eyes, and ears. So that would be your eyelashes, your nose hairs, and your ear hairs. Provide an early warning system to prevent injury due to sensory fibers at the base of hair follicles. And this would be even the little hairs along your skin. And then respond to fear, rage, or cold temperature by standing up to erect position. And this happens, we call this goosebumps, and it happens due to the contraction of the erector pili muscles that make your hair stand on end. The color of your hair, similar to the color of your skin, is due to the amount and type of melanin from the melanocytes. Something I wanted to make very, very clear to you that I don't think I did when I was covering skin color. The number of melanocytes does not determine skin color. Everyone has about the same number of melanocytes. My daughter is very pale. She has about the same number of melanocytes as my husband, who is darker skinned. Differences in the number of melanocytes do not determine skin color. It is the amount of melanin that the melanocytes produce, the amount of melanin, that determines the lightness or the darkness of your skin. Now, going back to hair, hair color varies from black to blonde. It is genetically determined and influenced by hormones and environmental factors. Pigment production declines with age, and that is where gray or white hair comes in. If a burn on the forearm destroys the epidermis and the deep dermis and then heals, will hair grow again in the affected area? It depends on how deep in the dermis. As long as the burn doesn't get to the matrix, the hair matrix, but more than likely hair will not grow again in the affected area, not in the deep dermis. Okay, two types of exocrine glands in the integumentary system are the sebaceous glands and the sweat glands. The sebaceous glands, we also call those oil glands. They discharge sebum, which is an oily secretion, into the hair follicles. The secretion is a holocrine secretion, means the entire cell that secretes the oil is destroyed along with the secretion. This oil or sebum inhibits the growth of bacteria, lubricates the hair, and conditions the surrounding skin. Sebaceous follicles discharge sebum directly onto the skin of the face, back, chest, nipples, and external genitalia. And this is just reminding you again the relationship of sebaceous glands to the hair follicle. The sebaceous gland is right there, so it is attached to the hair follicle in the dermis. And then another thing is this hair follicle does not go down into the hypodermis. So I would say back to that burn question, that if the deep dermis were destroyed, that the hair would not grow back in that area. All right, sebaceous glands are sensitive to changes in concentrations of sex hormones, and particularly at puberty, acne can occur, and that is blocked sebaceous ducts, which causes inflammation and leads to a pimple. Sweat glands are also called sudoriferous glands, and there are two types. There's the apocrine sweat glands and then the eccrine or merocrine sweat glands. And the difference has to do with the secretion. If you'll remember, apocrine sweat or apocrine secretions release part of the cell and cytoplasm along with the secretion, and merocrine secretions do not harm the cell at all. They release their secretion out of the cell without harming the cell plasma membrane at all. And you can see some sweat glands shown here. This is an apocrine sweat gland. This is an eccrine sweat gland. Notice that the apocrine sweat gland is associated with the hair, similar to the it's not shown here, but similar to the sebaceous gland. And the eccrine sweat glands, which are shown here and here, are not associated with hair follicles. So the merocrine or eccrine glands are going to be watery secretions. The apocrine glands become active at puberty. They secrete into hair follicles in the armpits, around the nipples, and in the pubic region. And it says here, although they're called apocrine, it's now known that they use merocrine secretion. That is news to me. These books change all the time, so but they are different from the merocrine glands in the fact that the secretion is sticky, cloudy, and odorous. And the reason for the odor is that bacteria feed on that sweat, and that is what is used to, that's what increases the odor. And of course, deodorants are used to mask that odor. Eccrine or merocrine sweat glands secrete a very watery secretion, which does also contain, it's 99% water, but it contains electrolytes, urea, and organic nutrients. It does have a salty taste because of the salt that's dissolved in the water. And the function is to cool the body through evaporation. The numbers of eccrine sweat glands are far more numerous than the apocrine, and particularly on the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands, but all along your body, really. Now, mammary glands and ceruminous glands are modified sweat glands. Mammary glands are structurally related to apocrine sweat glands, and they secrete milk. Ceruminous glands secrete cerumen or earwax. Now we'll move on to the nails. Nails are, just like hair, they're keratinized epithelial cells. They protect the dorsal surfaces of the tips of the fingers and toes. The nail body is the visible portion, and it contains a dense mass of dead keratinized cells, recessed beneath, in other words, going underneath your skin a little bit, bordered by lateral nail folds. This is the part of your skin on the sides of your nails that kind of folds up over your nail. The nail bed is in deeper into the epidermis, and it's covered by the nail body. The nail bed goes deeper into the epidermis, kind of like the hair follicle goes deeper into the epidermis and the dermis of the skin. The nail structure, we have the nail root, which is the site of nail production. The cuticle, which is the portion of the stratum corneum of the fold. It extends over the exposed nail close to the root. And then the lunula is the pale crescent moon-shaped structure near the nail root. And here you can see all the structures that we just named. We've got the lunula, the nail body, the nail folds, the you can see underneath the skin here, that is the nail root, which is the site of nail growth. What substance makes nails hard? Keratin. Where does nail growth take place? At the nail root. Now, when the integument is injured, there are 4 phases of skin regeneration. There's the inflammation phase, the migration phase, the proliferation phase, and the scarring phase. Once you have an injury, such as a paper cut or even something worse, there are mast cells in your skin that trigger the inflammatory response. The inflammatory response is heat, redness, swelling, and pain. And the inflammatory response increases blood flow to the region, and it draws phagocytes or other white blood cells to the region. They're attracted to the chemicals released by the mast cells. In the migration phase, a scab forms at the surface. Most of the scab or clot is a network of fibrin, which are protein fibers. The stratum basal cells migrate along the wound edges and divide to replace the missing cells, and the phagocytes clear debris and pathogens. If the wound covers an extensive area or involves a region of thick skin, the dermis must begin to repair before the epithelium can cover the surface. And when that happens, granulation tissue forms in that deeper tissue. And that is a combination of a blood clot, fibroblast, and an extensive capillary network. And it's going to form more of a scar than just one that's more of a superficial cut. So we've covered the inflammation phase, the migration phase, and then in the proliferation phase, deeper parts of the clot dissolve and the number of capillaries decline, and the fibroblasts have already formed their extensive meshwork of collagen fibers. The scarring phase is when the scab is shed and the epidermis is complete, and there is normally a mark at the injury site. Sometimes you can't see it over time, and sometimes you can. The scar tissue is usually higher. It's elevated above the epidermis, and the degree of scar tissue formation depends on the severity and location of the injury and also the age of the patient. Keloids are thickened areas of scar tissue covered by a shiny, smooth epidermal surface. I was hoping there's a picture. That's a keloid. And some people actually cut themselves to make permanent keloids, to make different designs on their skin. So here's a picture of the proliferation phase. It occurs about a week after the injury. And then the scarring phase, which is when the scab comes off, and there's normally some kind of a mark or scar. But a keloid is more of a permanent, you can tell this person had stitches, and this is more of a permanent scar that's going to be visible forever. Now, burns result from exposure of skin to heat, radiation, electrical shock, or strong chemicals. You can have acid burns, and you can have burns from cleaning chemicals like Drano. The severity of the burn depends on how deep into the tissues that it went and the total area of skin. First degree burn only affects the epidermis, like a sunburn is first degree burn. Second degree burn causes blistering pain and swelling. Some scar tissue may form, and then third degree burn destroys the epidermis and the dermis, may extend into the hypodermis. It destroys sensory nerves, and normally the hair will not grow back from a third degree burn. And these are just pictures that show you the difference.